So that's it. Two cup competitions in a week, domestic cup competitions in a week. Tottenham find themselves in the wilderness. Back to looking at Premier League results for now. I think he's. Let's start from the top. Do we think Ange is going to go? There's been a lot of talk about whether or not he would get the sack were we to go out of both of the cup competitions ahead of this weekend. I think it was Gary Neville that posited it initially, and obviously that's been a recurrent theme with a lot of people. Is he going to go? My gut feeling still is no. I can't. I think, funnily enough, actually, it's not really funnily enough at all. It's not, it's a pretty elementary point. Making out like it's some far-flung thing, the point I'm about to make. Funnily enough, I think the win away at Brentford actually probably topped up his credit in the bank a bit. Obviously not good to go out of both cup competitions, domestic cup competitions. But does that change? Does that change his sort of standing with the board? If what we were to, we were led to believe that everybody at the club, the important people anyway at the club, understood that the club was going through an unprecedented injury crisis. They felt he was doing well. There wasn't any noise from any of the players, no detractions, nothing like that. So we were to be, we were to whatever. Apparently he wasn't going to get sacked, and that's what a few journos and whatever ITKs had said on Twitter. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get sacked, but I kind of also would be. Startling insight, I know. Do I want him to be sacked? No. For the reasons I've sort of said previously, in that I think it will be a shame if this whole thing ends up this way. When Tell scored that goal, there was a sort of a look across his face, the sadness in his eyes. Anyone remember that from a few years ago? The sadness in his eyes, and it just, I don't know, just felt in that moment, I just felt quite bad for him. It was sort of like a panicked, excited, vacant expression on his face. Maybe I just caught my reflection in the television screen. I don't think we were very good today at all. I don't think we were very good. And as I was saying in the preseason, in the pre-match pod that I'd done on Patreon, I'm in this just funny limbo with Spurs where I can't really get a grasp on where we're at. Are we that good? Are we that bad? Don't really know, do we? We weren't exactly tearing up trees before we had all of the injuries, but we're definitely not doing anything right now, are we? There's lots of. If we were tearing up trees, then there's been a concerted effort by the Woodland Society to plant lots of trees around us, and we're sitting amidst those trees, chilling out. Probably not chilling out, getting a bit existential, reading some Sylvia Plath, maybe. Not very happy. Not very happy amongst those trees. We're not tearing them up. Not at all. We're listening to, Phoebe Bridgers, bit of Radiohead, all that type of stuff amongst the trees. I just want to win some games. I just want to see Tottenham win some games again. Do you know what I mean? Is that too much to ask? Like Villa didn't really like Villa were good value for their win. Don't get me wrong. I'm not no disrespect to Villa, good value for their win, but do they really have to like bust a gut to get one over us? I think maybe we took them by surprise when we got that goal right at the very end, and our tails went up, and they were suddenly like, "Oh, right, we might have to actually, we might have to kick into gear a bit here." But prior to that, what we had maybe 15 minutes at the start of the second half where we maybe came out with a bit of renewed purpose, but that soon disappeared, didn't it? I mean, Villa scored their second goal, and then it disappeared. I think the thing, what I will say is, I think my where I'll weigh things up, right? The pass that Ange gets from me is this injury crisis it's crazy, right? There's a Villa Twitter tweet doing the rounds where this Villa fan is basically saying he's sort of saying, I actually kind of feel for Spurs. They've got this many injuries, but with that in mind, absolutely zero excuses if we don't beat them today. And when you see it all kind of laid out, you think that is mad. And so I feel for him in that respect. I feel for him in the respect that, like with any other Spurs manager, the ownership of the club don't get their asses in gear and don't get a functioning squad in place for a manager in a timely fashion, right? This kind of piecemeal approach every transfer window of get you a couple of players here, get you a couple of players there. Hopefully you can make do with it, you know? So I feel for him in that respect. I think my issue with him, where I think the excuses are not the excuse. I don't think excuses is the term I'd use, but like the mitigating factors, excuses, sort of lose a bit of strength for me. They lose a bit of weight when I kind of think about like the way we looked at times today and the way I mean, like games like the Liverpool game, Liverpool are Liverpool, and they're a crazy good side. We can sort of talk about a lack of fight from the players and stuff, and yeah, and I think I find it hard to sort of pin that on Ange Postecoglou. Games like today, though, it's funny. I watch games like today, and I said this in my pre-match. Like I watched Chelsea Brighton yesterday, and Chelsea Brighton to me, Chelsea had a good little spell for a bit, but they're a middling Premier League side at the moment. They got Cole Palmer, and then sort of built around him a few decent-ish players, but I wouldn't say in terms of like their squad that they're a million miles better than Tottenham. Really, I wouldn't. Um, I look at Brighton, who, yeah, I know they have done very well over the past few years and have punched above their weight and all that type of thing. But again, you know, they're about 10 points ahead of Spurs in the Premier League. They're sat mid-table. They've not had the best season by their own standards this year. But I was watching Chelsea against Brighton yesterday, and I just thought, even just in like the fundamentals, even in just the basics, these teams both look so much just better than us. Like they just look like just in that sort of in terms of their flaws were higher than ours. And I look at Spurs when we're like our absolute like our flaw is abasement, you know? That's kind of where we're at. When we're not good, we just seem so incapable. And it's so like it's so glaring. It hurts. It's so bad. Like we can be so bad. Today we were so nothingy. And I get it. I get the mitigating circumstances, but I kind of think, don't we at least have? I mean, like the players that fill in are they're not Sunday league players, right? They're not League One players. They're not even Championship players. Most of the players we've got filling in are still international footballers for the most part. And I can't quite grasp why, like, when we play well, we are great. And Ange Ball is great, and his sort of vision becomes clear. The way we knock the ball about is brilliant. But it sort of feels like just from like from the outside, when I look at us, I feel like he spent so long like looking at here, looking at the blue sky, which is good in some respects, that we just neglect this bit. We neglect the bit like the difficult days, the awkward days, the days where it's a cloudy sky, it's not the blue sky, and the perfect scenarios haven't presented themselves for Tottenham, right? When we got a scrap and when we're in the mud, we're just not there. And we cling on to the odd performance here and there. We scrap for a win in that one, great. But those are few and far between, those type of performances. And I think you can only like we've lost so many games this season. We've lost so many games. And I just think this, and I keep saying it, but this sort of coverall sense that any dissenting voices to what it is that Ange Postecoglou is doing are just idiots. You're just an imbecile. How can you not how can you not see that we've got injuries? How can you not see that Ange Postecoglou is having to deal with X, Y, and Z, all these types of things? So I think everyone can see that. But it's not just about that. It's not just about us kind of not romping to victories. What were you expecting? Spurs to challenge for the title? No. But I wasn't expecting Spurs to genuinely, and I mean this genuinely, look as bad as I've ever remembered them looking. Like there were times this season, when, like I say, you can have your less than ideal first 11 playing and still look like a team that at least goes out and plays football and seemingly has a plan and tries its best to execute it. But given the lack of sort of players that we have available to us, it doesn't always work out. And we either lose or draw or maybe get a scrappy win. But sometimes with us, it just looks like we're just terrible. That we just, I don't know. You can't help but think that that's on him, you know? And, like, you can't continue to just present a one-sided argument that says all the good stuff he does is great and we should cling on to that, and any of the bad stuff that could be attributed to him shouldn't be because he's dealing with some adversity. But isn't that literally the job of a football manager? Like, there are injuries. Like, you don't always have your best players available to you. Sometimes the less than ideal circumstances are presented within a season. Don't know. I After the Liverpool game, I sent my old man a message on WhatsApp. I just said to him, "Why did you make me support this fucking football team? Why did you do this to me?" And I actually saw him yesterday on Saturday, and he'd bless him, he'd actually seemingly taken it to heart. He hadn't really picked up on like the fact I was kind of making a bit of a sort of an ironic. It's not ironic. Just I was just making a bit of a joke, a bit of a facetious joke. Because he was just like it wasn't like he didn't say it to me like the second I came in the door. It was a couple of hours, and I was just sitting having a chat with him. He's just talking to me, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, about your text. Just because the team isn't very good at the moment doesn't mean that they haven't been a wonderful and historic football team with lots of trophies and lots of really good times and all that type of thing. I didn't. It's just like, I was just joking with you. He's like, yeah, but a good side. You got to try and look on the positives. I was like, yeah, but Dad, like, you got to bear in mind, like, I didn't see all the stuff in the 80s. I didn't catch any of the tale of how good we were in the 60s. I've genuinely had 40 years now of us being of us doing nothing. And he was kind of like, yeah, well, we were good. We used to be really good. Um, and hopefully we will be good again. But it's it's tough, isn't it, man? You know, it gets harder and harder. I think it's not just a Tottenham problem. It gets harder and harder to stay in, not stay in love. I'm always going to love Spurs, and they're always going to be my team and all that type of thing, right? I get that. Yeah, that stupid Facebook meme that always goes around, the man holding the umbrella over the head of the club badge. Just because I'm mad at you doesn't mean I don't love you. um, but what I mean is just like top flight football, the beats of like top flight football. We drift sort of further and further from it. I think it's maybe partly an age thing, but I also just think the oversaturation of it, the money in the game, the inevitability of there's just such a lack of variance now. You know, we've hit that end point now where it's basically the same small group of teams that have hoovered up all the money and the resources, and they have that weight of history behind them. They just managed to bulldoze themselves through most competitions all the time. Madrid, Chelsea, Man United. And you could say Man United, look at them in the table, they still win trophies all the time. Even when they're this bad, they still win trophies all the time. Manchester City now in the party. Arsenal probably will get something in the next few years. And it gets harder and harder and harder to keep that fire alive, that interest in top flight football. The more expensive it gets, the more sort of commodified the whole thing becomes. And when your club are just like, when your club like Tottenham, as expensive as we are, with just so little to get excited about a lot of the time. And I know it's basic, right? I know it's basic, but the fact that we don't even do like the big money signing thing, you know? Like we don't. We don't even get the buzz of that. And yeah, I get that it's basic. I get that maybe big money signings don't always end up that well and stuff, but it's fun. The optics are good. It creates a buzz. It generates a buzz around the club. And you know what? We haven't done that. The last thing we did close to that was bringing Bale back on loan. We don't do that. We continue with this same cycle over and over again, bringing a load of promising young players, which is great. It's lovely. But why don't we do the other stuff around that now? The game changing. It's a game changing stadium, but the game has stayed the same, completely the same. There's no buzz. There's nothing. Carragher and all that were like digging into us after the Liverpool game. Carragher saying, "When do Spurs ever win a big game?" Which I refute to a certain degree, but at least post Pochettino, the only really big game I can recall as winning is that Arsenal game. Maybe they'll lose at Norwich. Like it's the last big game I can remember. Is it when it's sort of when the eyes were on us? That's the last one we showed up in. And when you've been asked to part with a lot of money to go and watch the club, you sort of think, well, we're not winning anything. We don't sign like big, exciting players or anything like that. We don't really do anything. We just kind of exist in this strange stasis. What are you rooting for? You got your mates, you got your routines, all that type of stuff, and that's good. I do this, I sit here and I bellyache about it. But wouldn't it just be nice if we just did something that changed it all up a bit? But, again, I don't know. games like today are, is what it is. Let's do some of the sort of feedback, some of the questions, feedback, whatever. Brett Nurse says, I'm furious he hasn't already gone. Zeros and One says, it's time to go. PG says, he'll go when we've no chance of Europe next season. Levy only cares about the match day revenue, £5 million a match day, £5 to £6 million a match day. Brian Park, opposition attackers must have so much fun playing against us. Yeah, that's one thing I was looking as I was watching this. People just cut through us time and time again. The midfield just non-existent. Non-existent. I'm gonna tear into Bentancur again, but I know you're all gonna get bored of it. John Benfield, I don't see us sacking him. We've just got to buckle up, I think. There are probably 16 games of the season left, most likely. Win 4 or 5 of them, and that's our lot. I can see him gone in the summer, though. Yeah, maybe. Charlotte says, better times ahead in the next few years when Daniel Levy finally sells up and buggers off to the Bahamas. But this era stinks, and Ange has got to go before we get relegated. I don't think Daniel Levy's going to sell up though. Daniel Levy might sell up, and then he'll stay in charge of the club, won't he? That's what he wants to do, isn't it? Yeah, but it's run its course, hasn't it? This whole sort of Levy era, it's completely run its course. Like I say, game-changing stadium, but the game stayed the same. We're just tired of it now. We need something new. We do. Club needs something new. The club needs just a refresh. Can't keep doing this time and time again, doing this dance, bringing in a new manager, watching it kind of either, do well or not, fly or flounder, and then sack him and hope and pray for the next thing to come good. It's just, we've done it too many times. Mark Lobley says, I think he should go. We won't go down, but maybe a change, and we could do better with the team in Europa. The youth coming through is so exciting. I'd be happy to be done this year and start afresh. Yeah. John W says we need players back this week, please God. Grant Echo Sonic, flabby tactics, flabby thinking. Owen Lawrence, haven't caught the stream for a while, but I've been tuning into the pod. Cheers for the therapy, mate. No worries. It's mutual, Owen. It's very much mutual, mate. I can guarantee you that. Somebody said in the comments last week, I'm sorry, I'm going to look now. I'm not going to do you the disservice of, because I'm going to try and contradict your point any second now. But bear with me, 2 seconds. I'll get there. I'm hearing myself. Mothheart. Hello, Mothheart. Said, you are very appreciated, Jack. Being a Spurs fan is agony, but you do so much to lessen it. Parasocial camaraderie makes a big difference, truly. So thank you. I appreciate that comment. And I would say probably if it is some sort of parasocial camaraderie, as I was saying to Owen there, it is as much for me as it is for you. It's kind of, I know I sort of joke about it like venting into the ether, but it is genuinely nice to kind of have a space to just, unpack the brain a bit, isn't it? And if that resonates with you, I'm happy because it's I genuinely I like it. I obviously enjoy it. I find it helpful. Owen also said, unfortunately, it's now time for Ange to go. I don't back him to take us where we need to go, even with the full squad. Too many coaches have him worked out. I saw a friend of the show, Ollie. He was getting into one with Vince Rigari on the timeline in Twitter, And they were sort of going back and forwards along the theme of Vince got a bit prickly. For Vince, first name terms, Vince Regari got a bit prickly. I think just as he does, because he obviously he backs Ange, and fine, fair enough, whatever. And I think he likes to give it some. I would say Vince Regari, and he doesn't really like getting it back. He loves to go on and call everyone idiots and all that type of stuff, and then does get a little bit. What do you mean when people give him a bit back? But I don't actually mind him. Like I do kind of find it quite funny his shithousing at times. But Ollie was kind of making the point to him that part of the issue he felt with Ange is the fact that Ange doesn't have a settled coaching team that he works with all the time. That he does kind of have this hodgepodge, if you like, of coaches. And in this instance, the coaches that he has at Spurs are all pretty young or very inexperienced. And you've got to wonder if that is playing its part in this as well. As much as we talk about the injuries, as much as we talk about the lack of players available to Ange, you've got to wonder if the coaches that he has at his disposal are capable, really, of actioning what it is that he wants them to do, what he wants them to do on the training pitch. Um, I've been, people have not liked me mentioning this before, but again, from what I understand from Vince Regari's own book and from articles I've seen published, Ange's approach to this is really to do a lot of the video analysis stuff with the team, to do a lot of the kind of the overall vision of matches and spirit of the time, all that sort of thing. But then the actual on pitch coaching stuff is generally all handled by the coaches. He's not often that active at the training ground. I think he keeps a watchful eye. And, as people have said to me, well, Ange isn't the only coach to do that. I'm simply just saying, from my understanding, that's how the kind of coaching operation runs at Tottenham, right? And if the coaches he does have at his disposal maybe aren't that experienced, then that could result in some of the stuff that I was kind of going on about at the top of the stream, like while we do kind of look a bit lost sometimes, while we do just look like it just seems like we get outthought a lot. It seems like some of these managers like Emery, these sort of older, more wily managers, bit more experience, they just seem to have the sort of the measure of us. But then we went to Brentford the other week. Thomas Frank is one of those managers that you would say that of. And we went to Brentford and did the business there, didn't we? But it's hard to know, isn't it? It's hard to know how much of a one-off that was or not. Guess we'll see against Manchester United. I mean, they're probably not the greatest yardstick at the moment, still, to find out where Spurs are. But I'm never really gonna roll my eyes at beating Manchester United in a game. By the way, one thing, because I've just noticed it now. Somebody said to me the other day, "What's the litter picker thing that's always behind you in streams?" If you are listening to the podcast, there's like a stick that's often like in the background of the room that I record in. It's the stick that you open up a loft with, like an attic. That's what it is. It's not a litter picker. I'm not doing community service or anything on the side. Toby Jones. This week has changed my mind on Ange. I wanted him to stay, but 2 woeful performances in a row, out of 2 competitions. We could, he says in speech marks 1. I just don't see how we get anything from keeping him on. Risky Risky Gumilar says, "Are you buying the Switch too?" Probably not, mate. I don't have a Switch One. I think if I were to buy any console, I would buy a PlayStation 5, maybe a PS5 Pro in time for Grand Theft Auto to come out. I'm not a massive gamer. I'm kind of like one of those basic gamers that likes Grand Theft Auto and FIFA, and that's usually about it. I have enjoyed that Indiana Jones game though. I got Game Pass with my phone. But anyway, people aren't here to talk about that at the moment. Um, Llama All Sports says the kangaroo shagger needs to go. Thomas Jones, it feels like it's time to be honest. My main reason is that the Europa League competition, in terms of teams remaining, isn't what it normally is. A serious manager wins us that with this squad. Deuce is wild. Give it Poch back. Let's talk about that. Pochettino turned up at the Legends night the other night. Ozzy Ardiles' quote that they're working on getting him back. As I said, the pre-match, I think if any of you have ever been to like one of these sort of Legends types of events, everybody speaks a bit loose. Everybody has a bit of a joke. So Ozzy saying that they're working on bringing Pochettino back is probably more tongue in cheek than it appears when it's written down in black and white, right? But the away end, singing, he's magic, this afternoon. Chris Cowlin, his report from the away end showed that, yeah, the away fans were singing his magic, Mauricio Pochettino. He has just taken the job as the United States manager. Whether he could juggle that and the Spurs job, I don't know. I know he went to Chelsea and all that sort of stuff, but I can't lie to you. I would welcome him. I would welcome him back in a heartbeat. The BT clip was doing the rounds again the other day. Him saying that he felt he had unfinished business at Tottenham Hotspur. Before he dies, he would love nothing more than to manage us again and hopefully win something with us this time. But I'm not going to campaign for it. I think we had the opportunity to get him back before we hired Ange. The club didn't want to do it. So I can't see them doing it now, other than if they feel that there's simply nobody else, or that it would put them in good stead with the fans, if the fans are all starting to turn on Daniel Levy now. I just think that's something that will forever remain in the past as a very happy time and a happy memory. I would be very surprised if Pochettino ever came back to Tottenham again, though. So there you go. Nigel Krask says there are no leaders on and off the pitch. I'm a neutral, but Spurs should be winning cups. It's not happening. There's a lot of yellow and green, so I'm guessing Nigel is either Norwich City or a green and gold Manchester United fan. If you're still there, Nigel, tell me. But yeah, I appreciate that. It's funny hearing a neutral as well saying Spurs should be winning cups. I remember when I was growing up, I've said this one before, but bear in mind though, no, when I was growing up, the insult for Spurs used to be Spurs are a cup team. Now we're not even that, are we? HD Sharp says the training is obviously not good enough. I question what they do. Even championship sides play better than Spurs. Errol Diet says, forget everything. The injury crisis is his doing. This is not unlucky. It's systemic. The players have checked out. We'll see. We'll see. Overseas bad actor, you're talking about late stage capitalism, resources concentrated in an elite few. Indeed, mate. Indeed. Ample samples. We can't bring Poch back. This club wants to romanticize everything. See Son as an example. Bringing him back would just be wrong. Let's get to the summer and reset. Yep, maybe. Chris from the UK. It's time to get someone else in if we want to do well in the Europa League. Toby Jones says again, I feel like we've been gaslit into believing the players are still playing for him. But if you look at that today, I just can't think that anymore. Give it to Trunk till the end of the season, IMO. You don't want that, mate. You don't want that. Just, no. No, I can't bother. No, but Joe Batty says no change if Ange goes, not until the new season starts. But then we sack Ange and the cycle continues. It's simply what happens when aims and goals do not align at a poorly run football club. You know, I keep going on about this, but I'm still sort of slowly working my way through Hugo Lloris's autobiography. And I got through the Pochettino era part. That was a tough listen, to be honest. There's some interesting part. I know I've just sort of spoken about Poch, but like there were sort of, you know, one of the bits that Hugo talks about is when they actually sacked Pochettino. He was just saying they genuinely, a lot of the players, him, Harry, they thought it was a joke at first. They thought it was a joke pretty much until they saw that he'd written on the what is it, like the whiteboard, the flip chart that we all saw the clip of. Like Pochettino belled him up and said, Hugo, they've let me go this morning just to let you know. And Lloris just thought it was a joke. But he was saying that, you know, their whole thing was the club didn't seem to understand. Like, we just lost the Champions League final. Yeah, we'd started that season horribly, but we just lost the Champions League final. We were all depressed. We were all just like in the gutter, but we all knew it was going to get better again. We knew it'd get better again with Mauricio in charge. They like Lloris was saying, he simply could not fathom that after what Pochettino had done for the club over the past few years, that they would sack him at the first sign of trouble. And the reason why I bring this up again is like when we're talking about the club not being well run, is that one of the big points that he made about Pochettino and his transformative effect on the club and why things went the way that they did is because he just basically said that, like, before he came in, the club were a total shambles. When he first got signed for them under AVB and all that type of stuff, he was like, this is a shambles, and he wanted to leave. And then they managed to talk him round, and he started replacing Friedel, was playing a bit more, but he couldn't lose sight of the fact he said he was genuinely shocked that, because he'd come from a club like Lyon, who they're a big French club, great sports club. Everything sort of ran in the way it should be. Everybody knew their job. Everybody kind of, you know, across the board. It was just a well-oiled machine. Everybody knew what they were doing. He was like, you know, we weren't the greatest side in the world, but we were a very good, historic French club. Everything was well run. And he thought, Tottenham Hotspur, like, okay, what appealed to him about Tottenham? He's like, it's a club in London, big history, but I can be part of a new history. I can be part of somebody that can deliver new success to a club that is so starved of it. He said he was so enticed by this challenge, but he'd always known, he was like, Spurs are a big team though, big club. And when a club like that comes in for you, it's exciting. And he said that, like, he was just astonished by the second he got in the door at the club, just what a shambles it was. He couldn't believe it. He said that one of the big things that Pochettino did was really just make the whole club function better. Started to make it actually operate like a serious outfit. And I guess he was bought into it. I think somebody like Mourinho, somebody like Conte, they didn't care. They didn't care about a legacy. They didn't care about building the club up. They cared about the next match, and that was that. That's why they're a bad fit for a club like Spurs. Ange seems like that's what he's trying to do, but who knows? One of the other things, one of the other things, everyone picked up on that just while I'm on this Hugo Lloris thing. One of the other things is everyone picked up on that watch story, right? The Champions League watch story, which was, say what you want. I thought it was Tim Pot personally. He obviously did, and lots of other people did. One of the other stories that didn't really get picked up by the kind of Levy out type people. What I mean by that is I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not basically people who are very, very, very Enoch out, Levy out, and look for lots of things. One of the stories I'm very surprised that hasn't been picked up was that Hugo Lloris was actually talking about. He was talking about Daniel Levy. He was talking about the way he operates. He doesn't. He clearly doesn't really like Daniel Levy. He speaks about him quite a bit. He knows that Levy is. He says he respects him. He respects him as a very shrewd businessman and somebody that's very smart, very intelligent. But I think he says at one point, he says there's a very cold streak that runs through him. And he's very hard to actually have a genuine kind of connection with. And one of the stories he speaks about, aside for the watch thing, that he was just like, this sums up who Daniel Levy is and what he's like. He said that when France won the World Cup, after they won the World Cup, a few days later on, Levy belled him up and was like, Hugo, so proud of you. So proud of you. You've done such a good job. It really is wonderful. When you're next in, come pop by my office. I want to have a chat with you and just congratulate you personally. And you know what? We're going to sort you out a bonus just to recognize your achievement and the fact that, you're the club captain and all that type of thing. And Lloris was like, wow, this is amazing. And apparently when he went in, when he went to Levy's office, thinking, wow, maybe this chairman has kind of, he is kind of human after all. Levy was just basically like, look, so basically, well done. Yeah. Now, the club captain winning the World Cup, that's really good for Spurs, right? So, you know how I said I'd give you a winning bonus? Think of it more as maybe like a signing on bonus, because we think it'd be really good for Spurs if you just signed a new contract now. And then what I'll do is I'll give you that win bonus as part of you signing the new contract. It would just be really good for us to have like France's World Cup winner being the club captain. And he just said he was just like, yeah, I knew it was too good to be true. I knew there had to be something in it for him. It couldn't just be for that moment, just well done, Hugo, you've done a great thing. He had to try and identify an opportunity. And I think he's got a begrudging level of respect for it, but also you can see why that kind of attitude, that type of outlook on things rubs people up the wrong way. And that's probably why we kind of find ourselves in this position where everybody hates the club. Everybody hates the club. They do. Former players hate the club. Current players hate the club. Media hates the club. Other clubs hate the club. Us, the fans, hate the club. It's mad. I'm just trying to look. I'm looking for a few more comments. HD Sharp says Ange isn't good enough. Better he left sooner rather than later. Mega Major Danger. Ange is older than Emery. Yeah, okay, yeah, I know. I was making more the point about the younger coaches and everything. Toby Jones got to wonder, would Ange get a job at another Prem club should he leave Spurs? I don't think he would, and surely that says it all. I don't know. But I guess it's not really our problem, is it? Darren says Pochettino won't manage Spurs in the USA at the same time. Mark Ainsworth says, wonder what it's like having a midfield. Brian Park, I don't get the whole thing about not sacking Ange to avoid the cycle, to be honest. Football teams sack managers all the time, and we need to keep trying until we find the next Poch. Amorim? Is that Amorim? Yeah, I don't really agree with the cycle thing either. I don't think the cycle necessarily just ends if we get rid of Ange, but I'd still be quite disappointed too, I think, still. Darren Kilban, he needs to be sacked. It's enough. 13 defeats, out of 2 cups in 3 days, and some of these players are not putting it in. Ange is out of his depth. and should have been and 2-1. It could have been much worse. Levy out too. Um, I don't know if you've seen Ange's comments in the post presser. I have not. Shall I? Is it worth me having a look now? Let's have a look. Ange Postecoglou press conference. I'm just trying to find it now. Bear with me. Football London, maybe. Tottenham Hotspur FC. If I can navigate this, they usually update it. Postecoglou on his future. People can judge me. They can say I'm not good enough, but they can't be critical of the players during this time. They've been giving everything they can since mid-November. You can't judge them at this point. There's got to be a better appreciation for what this small group of players has been doing for 2.5 months. It's not an excuse. It shouldn't be seen that way through objective analysis, and everything else is agenda-driven. For 2.5 months, this small group of players have played every single match. We had 4 teenagers starting and a 21-year-old goalkeeper today, all starting away at one of the best teams in the country. They've been doing it since the middle of November. I've got so much admiration and respect for them all. It was a disappointing result. The aim is to progress. We didn't do that. We didn't start well, and that gave them some momentum and confidence, and the crowd got going. Look, I've got to say, right, one thing I am going to give Ange, and I will continue to give Ange, right? Yeah, I know I sense it now. I can sense that the tide is turning on him. It does seem to have skewed a bit more Ange out, I think, for the most part. Even people that don't really want him to go are starting to think that it's maybe time. One thing I will give him is he's never thrown these players under the bus. I think like that he's a good bloke for doing that because he so easily could. We've had Mourinho, we've had Conte. What am I supposed to do with this lot? He's never done that to any of these lot, man. He maybe threw Basuma, like he definitely threw Basuma under the bus, and there was, you know, potentially some reason for doing that. The laughing gas, letting him down, all that type of stuff. But other than that, he's always up front with this type of stuff. Always up front, saying basically just shielding the players, telling people to leave them alone, to not dig them out. Come for me, but don't go for them. And whatever you think about it, I like that, and I think that's a sign of a pretty good bloke. And that's still why there's that bit of me that just thinks it would be a shame. It'd be a shame for him to go in some ways, but I'm not. You know, I'm not saying it's all a complete shame. I don't know. Should we do the players anyway? After Ange has just said, it feels quite fitting. After we've just read that he's saying that the players need to be left alone, that I'm going to go in and talk about the players. Let's do it. So Anton Kinski, howler from him today, but I still think he's a good young goalkeeper. He pulled off a number of decent saves. I've seen somebody on Twitter say that he could be a bit of a Lloris Karius who, yeah, when he wasn't making howlers, was a decent goalkeeper, and it's a bit soon for that type of thing. Joe Hart led quite an impassioned defense of Kinski at the start of the game, at halfway point. And, he is a young player. He's a young player coming into a pretty sort of fractious time for the team and for the club. I think the main sort of criticism that I would throw his way is that I don't think he's ready for the first team. It's just that Vicario comes in and replaces him instantly. But that's probably, what he was always signed for, right? To be a backup, to be a future prospect. So that's fine. Pedro Porro, I know he's played a lot of games, but he's constantly out of position. His defending is terrible. His awareness is terrible. I hope when a doggy's back, he's left and Spencer's right. And Porro gets a bit of time on the bench to recover and also just to, I don't know, take stock of things a bit because I don't think he's very good at the moment. And I don't think he's been very good for quite a while. Is that fair to say? I think it's fair to say. Kevin Danso, I really like. I really like Danso. I've got to say, I think his passing's neat. He's he's good on the ball. He's quick. He's very strong. I think his awareness is good. If we ever get to see Mickey van der Ven play again, I think they'll make a very good partnership. Mickey van der Ven, who apparently has only played 51% of games that have taken place during his time since signing for Tottenham Hotspur. Even less than Richarlison, who's played, I think, about 61%, and Romero, who's played about 62%. Again, figures are, trust me, bro, Twitter, but it sounds about right to me. I think with Van der Ven and Romero, I think the fact that we're after Mark Gay, it suggests that we are looking past those two, maybe one of them, maybe both of them. And it's a very difficult thing to have to reconcile. It's a very difficult decision to have to make. But despite the obvious qualities of both Van der Ven and Romero, sometimes the mature and right thing to do as a football club is to say, we need more solidity here. Yeah, we had a similar thing with Woodgate and King. Two absolutely fantastic centre backs who actually, ironically enough, ended up delivering as a trophy. But you can't build a team, especially a team that requires defenders to be so on point as this sort of Ange system does. You can't build a team around players that play 1 in 2 games. You know? Kevin Dancer, though, looks very good. Nasty cut on the head. As soon as he went down, I was thinking, come on. But, cut on the head, he got up and he was fine. Archie Gray, lovely player, fantastic player. I've said plenty about him over the past few weeks. He shouldn't be playing as much football as he is, but here we are. Jed Spence, unbelievable. Probably, again, between him and Tell, I reckon, for our best player today. The way he marauds down the wing, the way he cleans up, his awareness, his tackling, his physicality, he's just brilliant. He's a brilliant, brilliant player, and I'm glad he's getting more and more minutes. Lucas Berval, I'm gonna go against the grain here. He actually irritated me today, Lucas Berval. I know he's young. I know he's very young. So I say this completely with that in mind. I think he's a brilliant player. He's young, but I think his immaturity really showed today at times. There was a moment in the first half where he lost his man and he just went to ground, missed the tackle completely, and Villa ran in and almost scored again. I think he got a bit too emotional today. I think the occasion and probably the situation at Spurs is getting to 18, 19-year-old footballer with not a lot of top flight experience. Again, no disrespect to the Swedish league. And it's not his fault. But the frustration lies in the fact that Spurs should have more competent senior players around him. He should be coming in for the last 10, 15 minutes of matches this season. But instead, he's playing loads and loads and loads of football. I still don't. I know there's a lot of calls to build the team around Bergvall. I still maintain that I don't think he's ready. I just don't think. I think he's a fantastic player. Don't turn this into some, oh, you're so negative. Oh, you're the idiot that doesn't rate Bergvall. All that type of stuff. Obviously not saying that. I'm saying he's an 18, 19-year-old inexperienced player. His experience should be coming in short bursts through this season. He's been chucked in at the deep end, and it shows. But I wouldn't be building the team around him. I still think we need to make it a priority to be signing established, older, experienced central midfielders urgently. I think that's what Spurs urgently need, like so pressingly. I would not build the team around Lucas Bergvall. Not yet. I don't think he's ready at all. Rodrigo Bentancur, I've been saying a lot about him the past few weeks, and I could say a lot more today. But ah, just get rid of him. Just get him gone. Like, he's just pointless. There was some like whoever it was, maybe it was Alistair Gold. I think a quote from Alistair Gold saying that there's an understanding within the club that Rodrigo Bentancur is a senior figure. He wants to make up for lost time. The club want to build the team around him. God no, God no. We should be selling him in summer. Get rid of him. Get rid of him. He's not good enough. He is not good enough. Every now and again. So what? Every now and again, he can. He does nothing. He does nothing. He's always out of position. His passes are always weak, and he always chooses the wrong pass. I never see him dominate a game. Never see a 10 out of 10 Bentancur performance. He's just horrible player. Horrible player and a crap bloke. Like, get rid of him. Mikey Moore, Ange played him out on the right. Don't really know why. Plays so much better on the left. As if a 17-year-old doesn't have enough to contend with coming into this kind of scenario, that he also has to get played out of position instead of one of the more experienced senior players, notably Son Heung-min or Dejan Kulusevski. But Mikey Moore, I thought, was all right. He tried to do his best, and fair enough to take him off. He's 17 years old. Dejan Kulusevski, knackered. He's fallen off a cliff, really. Did absolutely nothing today. I thought, I love Decky. I just think he is somebody that has, been run into the ground, and yeah, but I think his drop off has been quite alarming. He did absolutely nothing today. I even forgot he was playing for large parts of the match. Mathis Tell, I thought was exciting, looked promising. One thing I will say is a few times when the camera cut to him, he looked fed up already. He looks fed up of half of these teammates already. If it stays like this, I would be astonished if he wants to stay at Tottenham permanently. Astonished. But it was a lovely finish today. Thought he worked his socks off. Thought he played well. Promising. Really promising. So I imagine we'll be seeing a lot more of him in the coming weeks. I was surprised to see him start out on the left. Thought he would start as our number 9, but there we go. Son Heung-min, you got to score that opportunity earlier on, man. Sonny, we know you can do better than that, lads. Martinez got down quite well and everything, but you've just got to finish that off, mate. You have to finish that off. You expect so much better from Son. And other than that, not an awful lot to report on him from his performance. Yves Bissouma, I thought for a moment when he came on in the second half, we kind of looked like we were going to do all right, and then we didn't. So, yeah, there you go. Papa Matsar came on sort of later on into the game, didn't he? And didn't really do a lot. When we had scored in injury time, did a stupid foul and sort of spoilt the momentum a bit. Allowed Aston Villa to have a set piece in a dangerous area, which they could just long out and sort of take the wind out of our sails a bit. So that was disappointing. But I still got a lot of love for Papa Matsar. Darren has said Kulusevski put in the cross for Tell. Yes, fair. It's a good point. It's very fair. It was an exceptional cross, to be fair, actually. So hold my hands up there. That's a very good point. Yeah, but that's that in it. Spurs out of another cup competition. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he'll go. I don't think he'll be sacked. But I wouldn't be surprised if he is. And it's just a shame. It's a shame that it's all coming to this, but we just got I don't know. It's not much more to say. Other than thank you for listening, thank you for watching. Please drop the video a like, subscribe. If you're listening to the pod, please leave a rating, please leave a review. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/RTRpods, pre-match previews, and other such things. You get ad-free podcasts, first look at videos and stuff like that I'm making. So there you go. Not doing a hard sell today. Come on, you Spurs. Another miserable evening, but try and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everybody. Yeah, not much more to say. Bye-bye.